book lovers, it is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today to talk about the books that I want to reread in 2022. I like to plan in terms of anticipated releases. I have released an anticipated releases video by the time that this video goes up, I believe. A lot of my anticipated releases are usually sequels. In order to have that binge feeling, I need to keep up by either recapping myself or just rereading the books, sometimes from the very beginning or sometimes just from the previous book. I love doing that. With this video, there are like almost no exceptions to that rule. I do have one standalone that I do want to read that has nothing to do with a book series, but the rest of them have to do with book series that I want to recap in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, a bunch of people do go to reviews, but like, I think to myself, number one, I'm completing an extra book on my Goodreads challenge if I'm gonna reread the book. And number two, it gives you the full experience when you're reading the next book in the series because you know everything. So I guess without further ado, I'm gonna get into the books that I do plan to reread at this point in time in 2022. I'm gonna be starting off with one that's pretty obvious because I've talked about it in my January TBR, House of Earth and Blood, the first book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. This is probably my most anticipated reread. I already really love this book. I've read this book twice already. So technically I've already reread it. I recapped myself on it before I decided to film my top 20 books of 2020 video. Getting to read this book twice in a year was a really good time, honestly. I feel like there's a lot that you could miss out on in an 800-page book, so that's why I'm very much excited to reread this book because of its quantity. Even though it is a little bit intimidating due to its quantity, there's so much that I can get out of each reread. I believe the next book's gonna be just as long or maybe even a little bit longer. So if it makes reference to the original book, then I feel like I'm gonna get all those references because I had just reread it. Technically, we're only getting one Sarah J. Maas book per year now, so why don't I make it two? This was kind of like a last-minute decision. I thought to myself that I was just gonna go into the sequel without a recap, and I technically can. However, I feel like the full reading experience and like solidifying that I'm ending a minor era, I feel like what better way to do that than to reread the first two books in the trilogy. I'm planning to reread the first two books in the Honey and Ice trilogy by Shannon Mayer and Kelly St. Clair. The first book being A Court of Honey and Ash and the second book being A Throne of Feathers and Bone. I really enjoyed my reading experience the first time I read these books. I feel like I've read both of these books within like one day or maybe even one sitting. They are just that addictive, but not only that, they're actually very quick, very fast paced. They average at around 350 pages. They're not really long and dense fantasy books, but they're very much enjoyable, and I do like the politics in them, I'm not gonna lie. I do wish that these books were a little bit longer so that I had more time to enjoy this world and these characters, but I'm hoping that eventually these authors will decide to create a spin-off because the series is really good, and I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on it, mostly because of the first book's title. But I do have to say that I appreciate everybody who recommended it to me on Bookstagram because it's right up my alley, and I feel like everybody just knew. They really did know I would really like this series. Very much looking forward to A Crown of Petals and Ice. That is the third book, and that's coming out mid-January. In the meantime, I want to reread these books. Pretty sure you guys are expecting these books to pop up on my list based on my January TBR video. Yes, the Crave Series by Tracy Wolff. I get that this book series is kind of written like Wattpad fanfiction, but I really don't care at this point. All I care about at the moment is that it has a plot. I actually started rereading Crave today. For some reason, I thought to myself that Court was coming out in March, but then I looked at the release date on the Goodreads page, and then I went onto a bunch of booksellers' websites just to confirm. Court is actually coming out February 1st, and that's what I thought to myself that I really should get onto rereading these books ASAP. A lot of people might think that I don't technically need to reread these books because I read them last year, but I read Crave in April of last year, and I read Crush and Covet, I believe, in June, maybe late May. There's a bunch that I do want to get recapped on, but also I want to read the first book with a new perspective because the first book, let's just say, I was rooting for someone. Funny because I actually didn't see all the red flags in a particular character. I pretty much was Akamaft in Crush. That's exactly how I felt when I texted my friend who actually hadn't read the Crave series but actually wanted to know how I would feel about the second book because she knew about the love triangle already and I didn't know, and I literally just had to vent to her. And she took it, but she's excited to read it regardless, and I'm happy that I warned her. I'm very much looking forward to reading both Crave and Crush fresh with a new perspective. I read Covet with the new perspective, but I think the reread is probably worth it because I need to give the person who originally read them some closure. And I think that I'm gonna do that while I read these books. These are not standout pieces of literature, but they are addictive and I do quite enjoy them. And now I bring The Prison Healer up by Lynette Noni. I believe The Blood Trader either comes out in March or April of this year. What I do know is that it comes out in the first half of this year. I haven't yet read The Gilded Cage, and I feel like I held off reading The Gilded Cage for a bit too long. So I feel like I need to reread The Prison Healer just to get the full experience, then go into The Gilded Cage, and then finally go into The Blood Trader. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this plot progresses because The Prison Healer leaves on one of the best cliffhangers I've ever read in my entire life. The Gilded Cage, I just know that there's gonna be some sort of moment of revelation. I'm trying not to spoil the plot twist that happens at the very end of The Prison Healer, but I just know that The Gilded Cage is gonna have some sort of heartbreaking reveal moment, maybe? I don't know, but what I do know is that I feel like there's gonna be some mistrust in the series. And that's why I'm like really excited, but also very nervous. And I really loved The Prison Healer the first time I read it. Even though it's like a slow build-up, I believe that the plot is just gonna get better and better as the series goes on. So I'm very much looking forward to recapping myself by reading The Prison Healer and getting the full experience when I eventually reach The Blood Trader. Some of you guys might not even know that I actually originally read this book, but I did, and I wasn't crazy about it because it wasn't necessarily a standout in a readathon that I did. So long story short, 2 years ago, I participated in the Tome Topple readathon. I read so many great books in that readathon. I read The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. I read the David trilogy. I read White Teeth by Zadie Smith. That was really good. But the book that is kind of like foggy, in my opinion, like I can't remember much about it, is actually part of a book series that I recently purchased the special editions of, but now I need to read them. And that, my friends, is Jade City by Fonda Lee. I read Jade City a year and a half ago. Do I remember anything about it? I don't. And I feel like it was because I was going from book to book to book to book that I couldn't like stop and really enjoy this book. And I feel like the best way to get through this series is to binge read the series, because I didn't get into Jade War straight away. I even told myself that I'd probably need to reread Jade City in order to read Jade War. And now that we have Jade Legacy, all three of them are here. I've purchased the Illumicrate special editions, which are absolutely gorgeous, by the way. But now I need to read them. I know that I'm gonna really love this series. Like, I know that I love fantasy action, and that's pretty much what this is. It's fantasy action, and has to do with, I believe, underground organizations. Those are kind of buzzwords to me, so that's how I know that I feel like I'm going to love this series. It's just I need to really pay my full attention to it so that I can really enjoy my time. Speaking of that Tome Topple readathon, I did mention that I read The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, and I decided that my one standalone on this list that I feel like I really want to reread after like a year and a half is indeed The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. Now, I did mention in my goals video that I do want to read more Haruki Murakami. When I was talking about that, I wasn't actually intending rereads. I was more intending on reading the books that I have on my TBR from him, which I don't really have too many. The majority of the books on my shelf by Haruki Murakami, I believe I've read, but there's still a bunch of books on my TBR, like probably around 8 or 9. You guys might be thinking that that's heaps, but like I've probably got around somewhere between 20 to 25 books by Haruki Murakami on my shelf. The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, I'd say, is one of my top 3 books by Haruki Murakami. The other 2 being Kafka on the Shore and Norwegian Wood. And I really enjoyed my reading experience with The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle when I was reading it for the Tome Topple readathon like 2 years ago. Especially with Haruki Murakami's chunkier books, there's much that you can forget in a small amount of time. With Kafka on the Shore, I reread it within the same year of reading it for the first time, and I got more out of it. I feel like I'm gonna get even more out of my reading experience with The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle if I do decide to reread it. This might be another book that you probably didn't know that I read at one time. I actually read it in the year I read the least amount of books. Yes, guys, the Anhedonia year. We don't really like to talk about that year. It was a pretty good read from what I remember, but do I remember much about it? No, I don't. I do remember it ending off on a lovely note, but I just don't remember much about it at all. And so I want to change that. So we no longer have the Gilded Wolves series by Roshani Chokshi, but I've decided this year that I want to read the Star Touch Queen duology by Roshani Chokshi. I have not yet read the sequel, and I've decided that I want to go back and reread the Star Touch Queen. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling that no one actually talks about in terms of it being a Hades and Persephone retelling. In fact, I feel like barely anyone talks about the Star Touch Queen in general. Like, everybody is so hyper-focused on the Gilded Wolves, and like, for good reason. The first book in the Gilded Wolves series was at least okay. Yeah, let's not talk about the rest of the series, but the Star Touch Queen, from what I remember, was a very enjoyable book, and a lot of people people did enjoy A Crown of Wishes when it first came out. So I've decided I want to revisit this duology. I feel like I've brought this up in a few TBR videos, but I really do want to actually give this duology some time and energy this year. If I don't do it this year, I mean, I would go as far as to say that I'm a failure, but like, I don't want to sound too depressing. Hopefully I can read this duology this year and see how it turns out. Of course, a book that I've been glorifying on my channel for the last few months is These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. As I've been mentioning, I want to have the full experience while reading the finale or reading the sequel. And so These Hollow Vows, a reread of it at least, I feel like it's just gonna be a good time and is really going to help me enjoy the sequel or really sink into the sequel as much as I want to. I've just been blown away by the twist, but at the very same time, I feel like reading the book where it left off without having that twist fully angering you. A lot of you guys might be thinking that the book ends off on like a bad note. It suits the story, let's just say that, but it will make you angry regardless. Like, it made me angry. I feel like I need that fresh, burning, angry passion that Bree has at the end of the book so that I can get through these twisted bonds in the way that Lexi Ryan intended it to be. Speaking of intensity, The Princess Will Save You. I know, I put this on my last year's reread TBR as well. I've got to reread it again this year for the full effect, for the trilogy. Similarly to the Prison Healer trilogy, I haven't read the second book yet. What I do know is that I want the full effect. Even though I've read this book twice already, I really don't care. I enjoyed the first book so much because the first book is so intense, and it's intense in the best way possible. It's a 5 out of 5 star read every single time I read it. Like, I love it. I cannot get it out of my head, but at the very same time, even though I have it fresh in my mind, I don't care. It's gonna give me the full reading experience that I need in order to get through the rest of the series. I'm looking forward to it. I really hope that the series ends off the way that I want it to. I mean, I'm like already nervous for the Queen Will Betray You. Let's see how The King Will Kill You will go. Regardless of the series ending this year, I think I would just reread it to have a good time. Another book that some of you guys might not know that I read back in the day was Raybearer by Jordan E. Fueco. I don't remember anything about this plot. And look at me, grabbing another Illumicrate special edition. I know, shameful. I mean, I want to reread the series because I know that a lot of people I trust in terms of reviews and a lot of my friends love the series, so I think I'm gonna love the series myself, but I don't think that I can continue on to Redemptor if I don't remember what happened in Raybearer. This is overdue for a reread. I do want to enjoy this duology this year, so I'm going to put my mind to it and I'm going to read it. And then I want to reread Legendborn by Tracy Dion. I reread this book back when I was deciding what books were gonna make it on my top 20 books of 2020. I'm really happy that I did. Technically read it twice. Once again, I want the full effect before Bloodmarked because I'm very much excited for Bloodmarked. Everybody is feeling a lot of things for the love triangle. What if they're not a triangle? Let's just say that. I hope that it's not the finale, but if it is, okay. I at least enjoyed Legendborn before it. Also gotta read Blood Like Magic by Lizelle Sambury. I loved this book so much, and right now it's currently fresh in my head. But by the time that Blood Like Fate comes out, I don't know if it's gonna be fresh in my head, so I've decided it would probably be best if I reread it this year. I adore it with all my heart. I treasure it with all my soul. I feel like it's not talked about enough, and I hope that by the time the sequel comes out, everybody is screaming with me because I'm gonna scream a lot when Blood Like Fate comes out because the series, it deserves all the sounds. All the sounds. I don't know if that sounds right. That's what I said. I said what I said. And yes, guys, I'm including this because I'm trash. I have to admit, I don't want to reread Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. I really don't. I don't like Kingdom of Flesh and Fire as much as everybody else does. I know, everybody in the fandom is probably gonna say to me, that's the best book, Grace. No, it's not. I don't know if anything is going to change my mind in terms of Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. I wish that there was an abridged version where we took out all of Alistair's chapters and we should be good. Like, I would be fine. If the book was literally 200 pages shorter, I would be fine with it. I've actually reread From Blood and Ash and Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, and I did that before reading The Crown of Gilded Bones, but I haven't reread The Crown of Gilded Bones. I feel like this is the book that I'm mostly excited to reread because it's the book that I enjoyed mostly in the series. I know some of you guys might be thinking, why would I put myself through this torture? I enjoy this torture, funnily enough. I understand why people do see it as torture. You know, at times it is. But I read the series for Poppy, period. I don't know how I'm gonna get through A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire again. I'm almost tempted to reread From Blood and Ash and then skip over to The Crown of Gilded Bones, but that's not gonna be the full experience, is it? And speaking of that series, if the sequel to this book is coming out this year, then of course I will be rereading A Shadow in the Ember by Jennifer L. Armentrout with pleasure, because I loved this first book. It's a big slow burn, but I love the romantic dynamic a bit more in this one. It was a lot more tolerable, in my opinion, than A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. Don't at me, people. I believe if the sequel is coming out, then it's probably gonna come out in October, so this is probably gonna be a later reread, but it's a reread that I'm very much looking forward to because I felt like instantly rereading this book as soon as I finished it. It was that good in my opinion. It's probably one of my favorite books by JLA. And the final two books that I want to reread in anticipation for the finale this year are Kingdom of the Wicked and Kingdom of the Cursed by Carrie Maniscalco. A lot of you guys might be thinking, what? G-Swizz, these aren't the covers. That's because I purchased the Bookish Box special edition of Kingdom of the Cursed and it came with dust jackets for both of these books. Do I regret it? No. Monolime is an artist and they did such a good job with these covers. I'm very much looking forward to rereading this book series, even though, as I mentioned, some of these book series are currently fresh in my mind, but the closer we get to October, they're probably not gonna be. But also, the finale is coming out. That means I need the full fix. So it's gonna happen and it's gonna be really exciting. I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. Are any of you guys gonna be rereading these books as well? Or do you plan to reread some of your favorite books? Let me know. Or if you have no idea what to comment, then leave me a red heart emoji. If you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. Also, I have social medias. I'm at GSwizzleBooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/GSwizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at GSwizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
Started out with half and I flipped it in a double. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double.